There are wounds you can't see. Yet they echo longer than broken bones, not on your body, but on your trust. Not on your skin, but deep in your spirit. And not just in the past, but in the mornings you still wake up with their weight. Like a shadow that rises before you do. And then, silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence that feels heavier than words. Because betrayal doesn't leave marks outside. It leaves hollows inside, where your hope used to live. Tell me, why do we keep waiting for those who broke us to fix us? Why do we keep standing in the rain, holding on to hope outside a door that will never open again? I've stood there. One night in the city, the rain came down so hard, it turned the street into rivers of light. I was outside her apartment, the woman I once thought I couldn't breathe without. My coat was soaked through, my phone buzzing with her name on the screen. I called again, no answer. Through the window I saw her silhouette pass by. The lamp still burning, music playing softly inside. She was there. She knew. And still, silence. Every drop of rain whispered the same cruel truth. You are not enough to be let in. I waited anyway. Minutes felt like hours. Hope slipped into humiliation. And then it struck me. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I was waiting for myself. To finally walk away. That walk was the hardest step I ever took. And yet, when I did, I found something unexpected. Silence didn't mean I had lost. It meant I was free. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving a point. And it's not about midnight posts, hoping they'll notice. Believe me, I've been there too, scrolling their profile at 2 a.m. like a detective on minimum wage. And the only mystery I solved was why I looked half dead the next morning. No, this is about something else. The kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't chase, doesn't beg. The kind of power that stands calm, unbothered, untouchable. So if you've been broken, betrayed, or ghosted, stay with me. Because the quietest victories are the ones that shake the loudest walls. And that's where our journey begins. The night I dropped my sword. After betrayal, the instinct is always the same. You want them to feel what you felt. You want balance, justice, a confession. I remember one night in Kai's workshop. The smell of pine and smoke still clung to the walls. On the desk before me was a letter, 4 pages long, written in my own restless hand. Every sentence was sharpened like a blade, every accusation inked like a wound, every memory twisted into evidence. But those 4 pages didn't come easy. It had taken me 4 days to finish them. 4 long nights of scratching out line after line, tearing up draft after draft. By the end, there were crumpled balls of paper littering the floor, like fallen soldiers of a war I was fighting alone. My hand ached from writing so much, the pen leaving calluses where my fingers gripped too tight. By the time I finished, my handwriting barely looked like mine, shaky and uneven, like a child just learning to write. Looking back now, I almost laugh at myself, thinking I could resolve heartbreak with a pile of ink-stained tantrums, as if a grown man could win back his dignity with a ritual so childlike. But in that moment, I didn't see it. I imagined sending it. I imagined the silence breaking, the weight lifting, the satisfaction of them finally knowing. But then, an image flashed across my mind that made my stomach twist. What if they didn't repent at all? What if they read my words, laughed, and mocked me? What if my letter became a spectacle passed around, ridiculed, a joke told at my expense? That thought shook me. Because suddenly the question wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. Am I writing to heal? Or am I writing to wound myself even more? If I send this, am I healing or just handing them the knife again? That was the night I dropped my sword. The night I realized revenge doesn't balance the scales. It only multiplies the bleeding. Because you don't owe them a war. You owe yourself peace. And the moment you fight on their battlefield, you let them control the rules of your life. So here's what you do instead. Tonight, before you sleep, take one page, any page. Don't fill it with their story, fill it with your truth. Write this line: I refuse to spend my energy where I am not valued. Then read it out loud. Whisper it if you have to, even if your voice trembles. That trembling isn't weakness, it's the sound of chains beginning to crack. And yes, you'll feel the urge to strike back, to argue, to explain, to draft letters that sound brilliant at midnight and foolish by morning. I wrote dozens of those, each one heavier than the last, but none of them ever healed me. The truth is, words written in anger never set you free. They only keep you chained to the story that broke you. So let me ask you, are you still rehearsing their wound like it's your inheritance, or are you ready to stop financing pain you never owed? Because victory doesn't begin when they finally understand you. It begins when you decide to stop fighting on their terms, and when you no longer give them a seat at your table. The discipline of silence. Silence has a weight most people can't carry. It feels like losing, like surrender, like letting them have the last word. But silence is the blade they never see coming. Not a sword raised high, but a quiet strike that leaves no scar on you, only confusion on them. I remember one afternoon, sitting in a crowded cafe. My phone buzzed against the wood of the table. Same number, same games. My thumb hovered over the screen, itching to reply, to craft the perfect line that would slice them the way they once sliced me. For a moment, I could hear it all too clearly. The thud of my pulse in my ears, the sweat rising on my palms, the fire in my throat begging to roar, my whole body leaning toward the trap of reaction. And then I looked up. Steam curled lazily from a coffee cup. Through the window, a child darted after a red balloon, laughing with a joy so pure it broke straight through my defenses. For a fleeting moment, I smiled too, forgetting the weight I carried, tasting again the innocence I thought I had lost. And that's when it struck me. What I truly wanted wasn't the last word, not the perfect reply. Just this: peace, lightness, the freedom to smile again. Silence gave me that. Because if I answered, I was still theirs. But in silence, I was finally mine. At first, that silence burned like fire in my chest. My mind screamed, "You're letting them win!" But breath by breath, I realized the battle was never with them. It had always been with me. And here's the twist most people miss. Silence doesn't expose their weakness. It exposes your strength. The one who cannot be provoked cannot be controlled. Silence isn't cowardice, it's discipline. It's the refusal to perform on their stage when you were born to write your own. Here's your practice. The next time a message comes dripping with bait, don't answer right away. Turn the phone face down. Breathe. Count to 10. If 10 feels impossible, count to 30. If 30 feels unbearable, count to 100. By the time you reach it, you'll know. The storm was never theirs. It was yours. And now it's gone. And yes, I know what you're thinking. But won't they think I don't care? Good. Let them. Because silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you finally care about yourself more. I used to believe my sharpest comebacks would destroy them. But here's the irony. My silence confused them more than any clever line I ever wrote. And honestly, it saved me from hours of unpaid overtime, writing emotional essays for people who couldn't even read my worth. If this moment made you breathe a little lighter, stay close. Sometimes one quiet choice can shift an entire life. So let me ask you, Are you still feeding their chaos, or are you training your discipline? Because silence, once mastered, is not the absence of power. It is power, calm, unshakable, untouchable. Boundaries that breathe. The first time I said no, it felt like I'd shouted in a cathedral. It wasn't even a big thing, just a favor I didn't have the strength for. And yet, when the words slipped out, the air froze. Their smile faltered. The silence that followed landed like a verdict. My chest tightened. My mind panicked. What if they think I don't care? What if this ruins everything? And then, I caught myself doing something ridiculous. I called after them, "Sorry, maybe next time?" As if I had just committed a crime. But here's the truth. That little no didn't destroy the relationship. It saved me from destroying myself. Because in that single moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Space. Space in my lungs. Space in my thoughts. Space to be me. And that's when I realized every no you fear is a yes to your own life. Boundaries are not walls. Walls suffocate. Boundaries breathe. They're not prisons to lock the world out. They're gates. Doors that let love in, but keep poison out. And if someone collapses the moment you set a boundary, they were never loving you. They were only using you. Here's the twist. When I finally dared to hold that line, life didn't get colder. It got lighter. People began to respect my time instead of assuming it was theirs. Conversations became clearer, not heavier. I slept better because I no longer rehearsed fake excuses in my head. Saying no didn't trap me. It gave me back the freedom to choose where my yes truly belonged. I laugh about it now, but back then I was like a yes machine. I could have put it on a business card. Hi, my name is MD, professional people pleaser, available 24/7, no boundaries, no refunds. And the truth? No one respected that man, not even me. Here's your practice. Start small. Today, say no once, without explaining yourself. No 3 extra texts. No long apology. Just one clear line. The right people will respect it. The wrong people will reveal themselves. I used to believe saying no would make me lose people. But I learned something. I didn't lose the right ones. I only lost the wrong ones. And that was the gift. So let me ask you, are you still afraid of being disliked? Or are you ready to breathe again? Because every time you say no to what drains you, you are saying yes to the life you were meant to live. Don't perform for closure. There was a season of my life when I couldn't stop looking backward. I kept telling myself the answers were buried in the past, that if I dug deep enough, I'd finally find the missing piece that made it all make sense. One night, I opened a box of old things, photos with fading smiles, a letter where the ink had blurred, a gift once given with promises that never lasted, and at the very bottom, a movie ticket. The paper was thin, edges curling, but the date printed on it pulled me back in an instant. The night returned, laughter in the dark, popcorn spilling, a hand that once held mine. For a moment, the memory was alive again. I could almost smell the butter, hear the clatter of candy wrappers, feel that hand pressing warm against mine. So vivid I nearly reached for my phone, as if calling could bring that night back. But then, the sting. That ticket hadn't kept the night alive. It had only kept me chained to it. And in that moment, something pierced me. I wasn't searching for memories. I was searching for closure. But closure was never in the box, because it was never theirs to give. Here's the paradox. Waiting for closure is like digging through ashes, hoping to find a flame. You don't resurrect fire that way. You just smear yourself in soot. The shift came when I stopped performing for closure. I realized I didn't need to keep these objects as evidence anymore. They weren't proof of my pain. They were just weight. Here's your practice. Take one old thing you've been holding on to only because it hurts. Don't destroy it in rage. Don't cling to it in sorrow. Pass it on. Donate it. Throw it gently. Let it leave your space. Because closure doesn't come from burning bridges. It comes from clearing room to build new ones. I once thought holding on would protect me, that every relic was a reminder not to be fooled again. But the truth? It wasn't protection. It was prison. And the day I let them go, something strange happened. I breathed easier. My home felt bigger. My chest felt lighter. The memories didn't vanish with the objects. They stayed in me, but transformed. No longer chains, but lessons. No longer ghosts, but guides. So let me ask you, are you still carrying proof of a story that's already over? Or are you ready to create space for a story still unwritten? Because closure isn't hidden in old boxes. It's found the moment you finally let them go. Pain is a teacher, not an identity. For years, I introduced myself without ever speaking a word. My eyes said it. My shoulders said it. My silence said it. Here comes the man who was betrayed. Here comes the one who failed. Here comes the ghost of what used to be. One night, walking past a shop window, I caught my reflection under the buzz of neon. And for a moment, I didn't see a man at all. I saw a collage of wounds stitched together, like I had sewn my whole identity out of scars. That sight hit me harder than the betrayal itself. Because I realized something brutal. I wasn't just hurt. I was rehearsing the hurt, performing it, wearing it like a uniform. But pain was never meant to be a costume. Pain is a teacher. It doesn't arrive to brand you. It arrives to instruct you. A betrayal that sharpens your discernment. A failure that deepens your resilience. A silence that forces you to listen to yourself again. And here's the line I wish someone had told me sooner. Scars are not your name. They are your notes. Notes that say, yes, you fell here, but you also got back up here. Notes that turn your life into a score of survival and growth. Here's your practice. The next time an old wound throbs, don't whisper, "Why me?" Whisper, "What now?" Write down one lesson it forced you to learn, even if the only lesson is this: I survived. That's not weakness. That's curriculum. And listen, I laugh at it now, but there was a season when I actually imagined handing out a business card that read, "Hi, I'm the guy who got ghosted. Nice to meet you." Not exactly the kind of introduction that wins respect, but in a twisted way, it taught me something. Sympathy might get you attention, but healing wins you dignity. Because here's the twist. The very thing you thought ruined you was probably the very class you needed. Every scar isn't a shame mark. It's lecture notes written on your skin by life itself. I used to believe my scars were my name. Now I know they're my notes, evidence of the classrooms I walked through and didn't die in. If you felt that line was written for you, share it forward. Someone you know might need to hear it tonight. So let me ask you, are you still rehearsing your wounds as lines in a play? Or are you finally ready to graduate from them? Because pain will always leave a mark. But whether that mark weighs you down like chains or guides you like a compass, that choice is yours. The power of detachment. I once sat across a table from an old business partner, the kind of man who sharpened every word before he spoke it. His voice kept climbing, his hand slammed the table, and the water in his glass rippled like an earthquake in miniature. Years ago, I would have answered in kind. Raised my chin, let my jaw lock, maybe even let my fist do the talking. Back then, I thought volume was power. The louder you shouted, the stronger you looked. But not that day. That day, I let him burn himself out. I listened, steady, calm. And when he finally paused, waiting for my explosion, I simply smiled, pushed my chair back, and stood up. No fight, no fist, just exit. My silence wasn't surrender. It was graduation. Proof that after years of fire, I no longer needed to win the war to know I'd already won. And here's the irony. I walked out calmer than I had walked in. A few years back, I would have spent the whole night drafting speeches in my head, rehearsing comebacks like I was preparing for a TED Talk nobody asked me to give. This time, nothing. Just quiet. Just peace. As I stepped outside, the evening air hit me. Cool, crisp, almost celebratory. And in that breath of clean air, I remembered something Elena once said. Hardship doesn't come to make you smaller. It comes to make you magnetic. And she was right. Detachment hadn't dulled me. It hadn't drained my fire. It had concentrated it, made me sharper, more composed. Not less alive, but more untouchable. Here's the twist most people miss. Detachment doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you finally feel everything, without letting it control you. Anger still knocks, but it doesn't get a spare key anymore. Here's your practice. The next time someone tries to drag you into chaos, don't grab the rope. Let them wrestle with their own weight. Count your breath. Step back. Walk if you must. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. And look, I'll admit it. Walking away that night, I half expected him to yell something after me. Instead, he sat frozen, mouth open, like someone who just swung at a target and missed. That's when it hit me. My silence spoke louder than any strike ever could. I used to think walking away meant losing. Now I know. Walking away is winning without noise, because the one who cannot be provoked cannot be controlled. So let me ask you, are you still wasting your fire trying to prove a point? Or are you ready to save it to light your own path? Because in the end, detachment doesn't dim you. It makes you radiant. Not because you shut down, but because you rose above. Forgiveness without return. There came a day when the apology never arrived. Not from the partner who lied to my face. Not from the friend who vanished when I needed them most. Not from the one who walked away as if my heart were disposable. For months I waited, checking messages, rehearsing imaginary conversations, convinced that one day they would show up with the words I thought I deserved. But the truth is, they never did, and they never will. That's when it finally hit me. Forgiveness isn't about reunion. It's about release. Because anger is expensive rent, and I was the only tenant still paying. Here's the irony. The day I forgave, nothing magical happened to them. They didn't change. They didn't call. They didn't even notice. But something miraculous happened to me. I felt lighter, freer, as if invisible chains had been unclasped from my chest. For the first time, I could step out of the cafe of waiting and into the morning sun. Elena once told me, "When you forgive, you're not excusing the storm. You're choosing to walk into sunlight." She was right. Forgiveness was never about their peace. It was always about mine. Now, don't get me wrong. I used to think forgiveness meant texting them, arranging a meeting, maybe even sitting through the world's most awkward coffee date. Spoiler, worst idea ever. That isn't forgiveness. That's reopening a wound and calling it medicine. Here's your practice. Write down one name that still knots your chest. Whisper softly, "I forgive you, but I release you." Then fold the paper and put it away. No text, no call, no reopening the door. Forgive, but don't return. Because forgiveness without return is the purest kind. It's not weakness, it's strength. It's not pretending the pain never happened. It's refusing to let the pain keep happening inside you. I once believed forgiveness was saying, "You were right." Now I know it's saying, "You no longer own my story." And here's the twist most people never see. Forgiveness doesn't reduce you. It enlarges you. You don't become smaller for letting go. You finally have room to grow. So let me ask you, are you still waiting at a table that will stay empty forever? Or are you ready to walk out into the light that's been waiting all along? Because forgiveness isn't the key they hand back to you. It's the door you decide to walk through. The final word is no word. Once, I stood in the rain outside that house, coat heavy, collar dripping, voice cracking as I called a phone that never picked up. I remember staring at the lit window, begging its glow to mean something. The street smelled of wet concrete, the kind that lingers in your lungs. Rain mixed with tears, but still, no answer came. Back then, I thought silence was the cruelest punishment. That if I just shouted louder, cried harder, waited longer, they would have to see me. But tonight, I walk past the same street. Same lamp, same window, same rain. Only this time, my phone stays in my pocket. My hands stay warm in my coat, and the only sound I hear is my own steps cutting through puddles. Steady, calm, free. Years ago, I believed strength was raising your voice until someone listened. Now I know, real strength is walking on, even when the window is still lit, even when the rain still falls, because their silence no longer cages me. It crowns me. I even laugh at myself now. Back then, I would rehearse entire speeches in my head, paragraphs, rebuttals, monologues long enough to qualify for a Netflix special no one wanted to watch. Tonight, no script, no lines. Just breathe. Just peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And I finally understand. I don't need their closure. I don't need their apology. I don't even need their recognition. My life itself is the reply. Here's your practice. The next time you feel that itch to explain, to prove, to plead, don't. Step outside. Take one silent walk. Let the urge pass like rain sliding off your shoulders. And when you return, write not what they did, but who you've become despite it. That's the story that matters. So let me ask you, are you still shouting at closed windows? Or are you ready to carry your own light past them? Because here's the truth. Silence isn't emptiness. It's fullness. It's dignity. It's arrival. The final word is no word. Not because you lost, but because you finally realized you no longer needed to win. We began in the storm, wounded, restless, waiting for answers that never came. And we end here, not with noise, but with a silence that no longer breaks you. A silence that builds you. I once met an old man who carried a broken watch in his pocket. I asked him why he kept something that no longer worked. He smiled and said, "Because it reminds me, time doesn't stop, even when people do." That night, I finally understood. You can wait forever for someone else to fix the past, or you can move forward with the time that is still yours. If this spoke to your soul, walk with us here, because the world needs more quiet fighters, and you might just be one of them. Breathe. You made it through. If these words touched something in you, stay close. This is the place for quiet fighters, for those who rebuild without applause, for those who know peace is louder than war, You don't need the last word. You don't need their validation. You only need to live in such a way that your very presence speaks, because the world will hear it, and it will not forget.